Hello, and welcome to a digital rendering of a piece that I like to call The Bride. This is a lot of fun to draw and a very obvious reference to the original Bride of Frankenstein movie back in 1935. The actress in that one was Elsa Lanchester, and I used her as something of a model or an inspiration for the piece that you're looking at today. Now, I really enjoyed this one. It was a lot of fun to do, but it didn't really turn out the way that I originally intended, if I'm being honest. And mostly because my original intent here was to go with something of a more photorealistic approach, to try to really kind of airbrush in soft shadows and light sources to create something that really just kind of jumped off the page in that nice three-dimensional look. Ultimately, I just didn't do it that way though. And you can see me starting to attempt that mentality right now. That's where the shadows are starting to go in. They're going a little bit sloppy at first, but the intent was to clean them up a little bit later. Ultimately, though, I was having an issue. And I didn't really know what it was at first, but in retrospect, I really feel like it was a problem with trying to bounce cool shadows with cool light. And really what we're getting into here is that light source. The light source is eventually going to be a bolt of lightning, so the light source is not warm, it's a cool color, and my shadows that I'm rendering here are cool as well. I like it, I want to keep it that way. It gives it that undead look that I'm looking for out of that Bride of Frankenstein character, but it just wasn't really working for that photorealistic approach. So eventually, I'm going to back out all this color and I'm going to start all over again from my initial sketch. And what I do at this point is decide to go with something of a pen and ink or comic book type style. And in doing that, I really feel like it just made the whole piece pop a lot better, and it really kind of achieved the look that I was going for. So you'll see me back out that color in just a second. And there we go, we're going to start over with a line drawing. Now, to be honest, this wasn't without its challenges either. And I'll be frank and upfront and let you know that I can tend to be a lazy artist on occasion. If I'm working on something and it just doesn't seem to be working on the page and I'm not nailing the proportions or something like that, it's not unusual for me to just give up, start over, start again, what have you. I didn't want to do that with this one though. There was a lot of elements of this piece I really liked. I really liked the hands, even though they're not necessarily anatomically correct. I really feel like they sold the creepy factor. I like the pose in general. I like the way she's so dramatically looking off to the side, and I knew the light source was going to provide some nice bold shadows that would be really interesting to pull off. However, there are just issues with trying to make her look pretty and feminine. And you can see where I'm struggling here. The jawline and the chin, the mouth's not quite right. The eye that's sitting behind the nose is a trouble area as well. And all these need to be corrected one by one before I felt comfortable to move back into a coloring phase again. So at points you'll see me move around the piece. I'll move the mouth a little bit, give up on it, and go deal with some folds in the blouse. I didn't like the way the eye looked, so I'll move it around, redraw it a couple times. Still not happy with it, would go full around with the hair for a little bit. And this is just ultimately how I work. I'll just kind of go back and forth, skipping around until I finally kind of hone in the overall look that I'm going for. And when I say overall, that means sometimes zooming in to getting into detail, but always zooming back out, stepping back a little bit and saying, okay, as a whole, is this thing reading the way that I want it to read? And that's really probably a really good piece of advice for anybody that's trying to draw a figure or a human being, especially something that's meant to have some sort of resemblance to something real or someone real. Step back, take a look at it, do your compare and contrast, and see if it's really meeting the needs of the piece as a whole. Don't get stuck in the details. So that's me back looking at that eye again, trying to get it in the way I want it, even at some points, erasing the nose and starting over. And that's something else that might be a really good piece of advice as well. Don't be afraid to erase. I know that seems really obvious, but at the end of the day, erasing allows you to kind of go back in and start over and readdress the idea. And if you're afraid of erasing and drawing it again, then you need to work on your drawing skills a little bit more, because you should be able to draw a nose over and over and over and over again. And if you're intimidated by that, then you need to practice. The same thing could be said about an eye or the lips or anything to that effect. Now, ultimately, I'll start honing in these shapes where I want them. I'll get the eyes balanced, I'll get the symmetry that I'm looking for, and once I get happy, then I'm going to start putting the color back in. Now, as I said, this is going to be a little less subtle with the shadows because I'm going for more of that comic book approach. So once I get this jawline in the way that I like it, the color comes in and then the shadow is going to be big and bold and not a lot of nuance to it. I'm happy with that though. I really feel like it worked because of the bold lighting source of the lightning bolt that we're going to see in the background a little bit later on. Now, again, I did fool around with this jawline a little bit, mostly on the thickness of the line. Couldn't decide really what looked the best. I wanted to sell the jawline, but still make it look feminine. And now that I'm happy with it, here's where we start putting in the colors. Now, I work in a pretty similar way anytime I color a piece. I start with my flat tones and then go in and add my shadow. Sometimes I add 2 layers of shadow, a kind of a medium shadow and then a more harsher, darker, blacker shadow. Once I get all that in, then I'll put in the lights. And with this one, again, bold shadow, but more of an airbrush effect when it comes time to put in the lights on the right-hand side of the figure. Remember that bolt of lightning is going to be in that white area in a little bit. So anything that's on the right-hand side of her is going to be lit by that lightning bolt. And I'm giving it a soft light, so the airbrush effect is going to be the thing that sells that. I'm not sure why I put a light source underneath her hair. I will get rid of that a little bit later on and use something of like bold black lines to sell the texture, which was ultimately what I was trying to do there initially. I'll also spend some time kind of cleaning up some of the other line work a little bit later as well. Now, sometimes when you watch these time-lapse digital recordings, it may seem like not much is going on. There's almost like a pause in the movie. Usually when something like that's happening, at least when I do it, it means I'm zoomed into a very tiny area and really focusing on the detail work that may just be somewhat invisible to the naked eye. So if you see something like that going on, it's not that it's done, or it's not that you're at the end. It's that some detail work is being addressed, and that's for the betterment of everything, because even though it may look a little bit invisible, when it's all fully rendered, it does sell the full piece when it's done. Now, what I'm working on right now, the cheek. I did also have a lot of issue with the cheek, really trying to kind of sell it the way that I wanted to, and what I ultimately decided to do was to light it differently. There's a little piece of it that's harsh shadow, but I wanted a little bit of a softer blend, if you will, on the area that goes towards her ear. I think it sold the femininity. I really can't explain it any other way. And I did also something very similar with the shadow that falls across her forehead. That's a harsh line right there. So if I can blur it a little bit, then I'll help sell that it's a curved surface and not just this harsh angle. Angles equal masculinity, at least to me. The more things that you can show as a softer curve equal femininity. At least that's just the way I see it, and that's the way I like to render it. Okay, so what else do we have here? Notice a little bit of rim light has gone in on the left side of the hands. So to, again, helps just kind of sell this idea that she exists in 3-dimensional space. And I'm also putting in some texture lines around the hair as well. I love these little curly Q lines. They really give you this idea that her hair does have texture, that it's not just one mass. And it's really easy to overdo. So I tried to kind of keep that work to a minimum, even though I do like the line work. I think it looks funky, and I even added some underneath, again, to sell that shadow texture underneath the base of her skull as well. The background's going to go in a little bit, and that means this video is almost done. So let me just take a moment here to thank you for watching, and to please subscribe if you haven't done so already. It's the subscriptions that let me know that you're enjoying this and that I should be adding more movies. Also, let me just state that I know this has a large Halloween theme. I've got a large backlog of Halloween pictures that I'm going to be posting soon, but once I'm done, I'll get into some more traditional fare that doesn't necessarily have any Halloween or even holiday theme to it. If there's something you'd like to see, or if there's something you'd like me to discuss in the movie, please add it in the comments section. I'm happy to discuss anything you want to discuss during these videos, and I'm certainly happy to offer some advice if you want to know how some things were achieved or how some effects were done. In the meantime, enjoy and have a great day.